Welcome back to Drake and Josh.
Episode 4.
4, dude. Dude, it's been awesome.
A full month of consistent persistency.
Consistent persistency. That's great. I think we should talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. We're actually talking about that today. Consistency and persistency, not exactly in that order. We both. It's great. One of the reasons why we started this podcast in the first place was that we wanted to really take this at an angle of, hey, we're not necessarily like these crazy successful people, but we're on the journey.
I mean, we are, but we're not necessarily that way.
Perfect, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where we're at, and it's cool because on the persistence and the consistency side, that's something that especially we both struggle with sometimes. It can be difficult. It can be very difficult.
Absolutely. That's my biggest downfall.
Yeah?
I would say so, yeah. My inability to be consistent.
So far.
It depends on what, I suppose it depends on what metrics you're measuring your consistency with.
Well, let's not get into metrics, okay?
All right.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe we can get into metrics.
Well, if your metric for consistency is staying productive or staying motivated or always trying to do something, then I'm very consistent. But if we're talking about individual particular things, then less so.
Okay, this is what I would. So persistence. I would say that persistence in this context would be that despite opposition and setbacks and those different things, then you push forward anyways, and that's sort of the metric on that.
Right.
That's the definition for this context. As far as consistency goes, I would say that part of that is not just being productive, because times where I've had weeks or several weeks in a row before where I've been very busy. I've kept myself on it, but then I've slowly fallen off the potent activities, the ones that actually move the needle and actually push you forward, and then you're just doing busy work. Especially if you have I work at family business, and so that can kind of get to that point where I'm just kind of doing this the day-to-day minutia type stuff. But it feels like I'm busy. It feels like I'm being consistent. And I'm doing things that are important, right? But I'm neglecting those things. It's kind of like the whole seek discomfort thing that we talked about before, where we're in this place where we're busy, but we're not pushing the boundaries and things what we need to actually really do to progress. So that's kind of how at least I see it in my own life with persistence and consistency.
Yeah. So I would say, looking at myself from a third person point of view or whatever, I've been very persistent with my desire to succeed and do things and create positive change, but I have not been consistent in the methods by which I want to do those things. So that's how I would look at it for myself. How would you look at your consistency versus persistence?
Yeah, I smile because it's pretty similar. I would say that over the years, I have probably lacked in consistency with both of those things, because up until really last year, I would say that I still really struggled with mental health issues. And now after high school, for instance, I felt like I was getting a better hold on things. But then, we talked about that in Embracing Failure, with moving to Florida, and that kind of just fell apart there. And then I was kind of back on the not so good track. And so I would say, as far as that goes, I have been inconsistent with that, but I've always felt like I needed to go outside that comfort zone and go and really push for something. But like you said, as far as consistency of how you actually go and achieve that, I mean, I can think of even in not so far off history of me changing kind of and pivoting a little bit, even in terms of when I have been what I'm really focused on now is the mental health side of things, and really trying to really trying to distill the things that work best for me so that I can help other people, while also studying traditional methods as well. So that's been pretty consistent. I have switched things up as I go. I think that there's definitely a difference between pivoting and maybe losing focus. Maybe that's not the right way to phrase it.
For me, I think when I lose focus is that's when I pivot.
Okay.
Like, I mean, we talked about greenhouse and embracing failure. That's exactly what happened there was a loss of focus and consistency and just like a loss of clarity. And then I was like, I'd been like beating that dead horse for so long that I just had to pivot to something new. And now like things are happening and I'm back on track in that regard. One thing I've learned, which is kind of unfortunate, is that I don't think it ever gets easy. Like the people that are out, I know this for a fact actually. The people that are out in the world doing crazy, incredible things, like it's not particularly easy for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're just good at consistently pushing themselves further. Because I've been thinking that, oh, once I hit this magical habit, then all this stuff's going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I've realized, maybe you have too, is that that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's a constant struggle and battle with yourself, but it's one that when you get really good at battling yourself, it becomes not easy, but you're able to be consistent about it because you know how to avoid your own mental pitfalls and stuff like that. Also, that timer's not going.
Nice. There we go.
Yeah, I just noticed that.
No, that's perfect. No, thank you for catching that. No, I through Audible and trying to find some new titles, and the one that I saw, it was called "Declare War on Yourself." And although I don't know what the book is about, that what that kind of, for whatever reason, that kind of like stuck with me, and in my mind I was like, okay, what do they mean by this, declaring war on yourself? Because I think especially like that can be kind of misconstrued as something that's very negative and like beating yourself up and things like that. Like that's not what I think of when it comes to like winning the battles in your mind and like declaring war on yourself, things like that, right? Because I really think that you do kind of have to conquer your mind to a certain degree in order to really get that consistency, because there's so many ways that we trick ourselves into staying inside of our comfort zone. I think I have brought this up in other podcasts, but it's the Jay Shetty talks about like finding the ways that you trick yourself. And I mean, like yesterday, for instance, I was very sick. I had some Chinese food, sick like ate some bad food type sick, right? I was just not having a good time, right? And so it did pop into my head. I was like, does this mean I can't do the podcast tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, now obviously if I was like throwing up, then I couldn't do the podcast, right? But I woke up this morning and I was like, yeah, I don't feel super great, but it also, something I thought about immediately was Tony Robbins. He had mercury poisoning during one of his events, and so he had to be rushed off to the hospital. And he was like, "Yeah, you can't even leave the hospital. Like, you need to stay here." He's literally mercury poisoning. This is why he sounds so raspy when he talks now.
Oh.
Yeah. So he did not always talk like that, right? And he said, "No, I don't cancel events." So he went and he finished out his seminar in a wheelchair, completely messed up, right? And so that just kind of shows you that you're absolutely right that it does not get easier. I have also gone through periods where I think, okay, I if only things were easier, right? But I don't think that that's necessarily the right way to think about it. And I think that by actually pushing past that, how do I make it easier, and actually to a place where it's more difficult, is when you can find that space where you say, okay, now I'm finding the resources, right? I'm pushing myself past that.
Right. It's kind of daunting to think about though, because I've for the longest time, maybe until the last couple months, been searching for like the magical habit or the magic mindset shift or whatever that makes it all easy.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've been realizing is as we talked about, it doesn't get easy. The magical thing is accepting that it doesn't get easy and just rolling with that, because it's really sucks to think about, because I've spent my entire life, now I'm only 19 or whatever, but I've spent a long time searching for this thing. Like, what is it? What's the productivity hack? What's the mindset hack? What's the whatever, like the shortcut to make being super productive and getting a lot done easy? But there is not one, I don't think. But it's also maybe nice to realize that, right? I mean, I find that I spend a lot less time searching for like a cure now, and more time focused on just like doing stuff. Like the whole thing, maybe we talked about it, but watching productivity videos or something on YouTube, and you're like, I'm being productive right now because I'm watching videos on how to be productive.
Yeah, 100%.
But you're really not being productive. What I've also started doing, which has been really helpful, is if I'm reading or watching videos, I'm taking notes while I'm doing that. So it's cut down completely on my like passive participation in YouTube, because if I'm watching something, it needs to be useful and relevant. And like literally, I just sit here with this same notepad and I just write notes. Like I'll pause the video. It takes a lot longer to get through a video, but like I'm like, oh wait, okay, yeah. Like specifically doing a lot of research on startups and stuff like that, and just going through and like, okay, what's, we're talking about minimum viable product, and I just went through this 30-minute video, and I'm just pausing it every couple seconds or whenever something is a little like nugget of whatever, and writing it down. And the same thing with books. I go through a chapter and I just have my notebook next to me and I'm reading, and every time I find like I just quote the book essentially and just write out every time I find something that, I need to use this, I need to use that, and that has cut down a lot on that fake productivity stuff, because if you I've just spent so much time consuming so passively.
Yeah.
And if you're going to consume passively, like watch The Office or something, not a productivity video, because you at least know when you're watching The Office that you're not being productive.
Yeah.
And like, you don't always need to be productive, right? You can have like, a Sunday night where you hang out with your whoever and watch The Office. That's fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing shameful about that. But what is shameful is tricking yourself into being not tricking yourself into being productive. Being productive is fantastic, but tricking yourself that you're being productive when you're really not.
It's also this has been in my experience. There would be times like you're talking about where I switch off into passive mode, and I'm just kind of like not really going through things I'm actually learning. I'm just kind of like just hitting whatever videos, and I'm just like not engaged, right? I don't feel like I actually relax, and I don't feel like I'm actually learning. So although I am tricking myself, I'm like, okay, yes, I'm trying my best to be productive right now, when I'm not. What's better for me is that I've found is that, okay, I either need to, right? Because a lot of this currently this happens typically like later at night. I mean, later at night for me is like 9 p.m. because I get up so dang early. But when it gets to that point and I'm like on my computer trying to take in information, or I'm trying to do whatever I need to do, then I say I either need to change my state right now, or I need to shut this off and go do something that's actually going to recharge me, or go rest or hang out with my family or whatever. And what I mean by that is like there's also times where I'm discouraged, or I read something random on the internet. I'm like, oh man, that sucks, and I'm completely like flattened, but there's ways to bounce out of that, So managing your state, managing your focus, I think is incredibly important in that whole process. Another thing that I think is super important is morning routine, sequence, and sort of trusting that to give you a good start to your day. Because what I found is that really, like, just having no morning routine, that provides so much more inconsistency in my days.
So what is your morning routine?
My current morning routine is that I have my alarm on the other side of so it starts the night before. I have my alarm on my windowsill, which is far away from my bed, so it's on the other side of my room. And then the night before, I make sure that I'm not falling asleep with I don't have my phone with me, I'm not falling asleep in front of a screen, so that's super important. And I'm also, at that point, even before I fall asleep, I'm thinking like, okay, what am I doing tomorrow? How is my morning routine going to look like, right? I mean, it's consistent, but I'm thinking about it being successful, right? And because I want to make sure that I don't wake up in an already discouraged state,
Right.
That's what I found. I know I brought this up on a different, it was either a different podcast or before.
Yeah.
So that has helped me significantly. Then I fall asleep. So usually right now I'll sleep from about 11:30 to about 4:30, and then I hear my alarm and it's like crazy loud, and so it starts off really slow, right?
Right. I remember you played it for me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just like, dun, 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 dun. And then so it's like that for me like 3 seconds, and then so that's how long I have to get up and shut it off, right? Because as soon as it stops, or as soon as that first 3 seconds is over, it starts screaming like so loud, right? And there's people sleeping in adjacent rooms, so I have to make sure that doesn't happen. So that gets me out of bed. I throw the covers off, and I get up and I shut that off. Another thing that has definitely helped me a lot, and I admittedly haven't been as consistent with this, but if I am going to the gym that morning, to have those clothes like right there, like eliminating those excuses ahead of time, so that no matter what, I'm going to grab those clothes, I'm going to head out. Because like another thing that really helped me a lot when I heard this was Jocko Willink say, this is like a super tough Navy SEAL guy, right? Like Navy SEAL commander dude, so like super crazy dude. And he's like, yeah, like half the time I do not feel like getting out of bed. It's like this is like epitome of discipline type of person. So what you're saying before, how like it doesn't necessarily get easier.
Yeah, well, David Goggins talks about it too,
exactly.
Which is one of the people that sort of helped me in this realization of like, I need to stop searching for some magical thing that's going to make me be more productive, and I just need to be more productive, and just get more done and be more consistent. He talks about it too. He's like, most days, I do not want to wake up and run, 5, 10, 15, 20 miles, whatever he does, or go to the gym. He's like, but that's just what you do. You wake up and that's what you do. And I feel like I've been getting pretty good when it comes to I've been working on it. Pretty good when it comes to like consistency and persistence in terms of working out and running. So especially over the past couple of months, I've been lifting and running and stuff, and that's been pretty awesome. That's probably the most consistent thing that I've had recently. But yeah, it feels good to not want to do something and then to do it.
It does. It really does.
And that's and it's still like I'm not perfect with it. It'll still take me time. Like there's definitely been some times that I'm like, all right, it's time to go run, and it's like 9 a.m, and I don't end up running until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I still end up running.
Yeah.
But
that time
I just like, it's 9. It's like, oh, I gotta do this other thing. I should probably go work on schoolwork, and then it's like 3 o'clock, and I'm like, shit, okay, I have to go run, or else it's gonna get dark. And then there has been times where it hasn't been perfect. Like I know Sunday night, I found out, not this Sunday night, I think it was last Sunday night. Unfortunately, I put off going to the gym for the whole day, and at like 7 o'clock, I'm like, all right, I need to go to the gym. So I got in my car, I drove 20 minutes to Crunch, and all the lights are off and nobody's there. And I'm like, shit, Crunch closes at 7. And then I drove to Planet Fitness because I need to cancel my membership there, but I still have a Planet Fitness membership and they were closed. So then I was like, all right, guess I'm just gonna run shirtless in the cold at by this time like 8 o'clock. And I got home and I was like, no, no, we're not doing this. And yeah, so no, I'm definitely not perfect with that. But with that, I'm like, okay, I live in Colombia, Scumlumbia, as some people call it. It's actually not that bad, but I was like, it's kind of sketchy. I was like, I don't want to be running around shirtless. I was like, in the dark at 9 o'clock at night or 8:39. I'm like, should I bring?
Might be a good thing, a good thought to have. Like I had a similar thought when I was. I remember I sent you the one video.
Yeah.
On Marco Polo, and I was like, dude, I'm super hyped. Let's get done at the gym. We're gonna go home and run. And I did, but I live in the woods, so I went to like Middle Creek, the wildlife preserve, and I was like, okay, it's pitch black, surrounded by woods.
Sketchy stuff happens at Middle Creek.
Yes.
Bad stuff happens.
There's been some stuff that's happened.
Really, yeah.
I think there's been some bodies that have turned up around that area.
Yeah. There have been. I remember. Just a little quick story time. My brother and his friend from Boy Scouts and I decided to.
Boy Scouts.
Yeah. Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts. I think it was Boy Scouts at that point. And he came over for the day. What was this kid's name? I don't remember. And I used to live right across the street from Josh. So we're right on a stream. There's like trails up behind us and whatever. So we found this stream that went up the mountain or hill or whatever. And we followed it for a super long time.
Uh-oh.
And we came across this like lean-to in the woods way, way off the trail. Like we were like at least, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile, because you have Middle Creek Trail and you have Elders Run, and where the bridge is on Elders Run. People who are around here will know what we're talking about, but there's that stream that runs up there where that bridge is. So we just followed that stream up for a super long time until we found this like campsite that had a bunch of like writing scratched into the rocks around the fire pit of like Celtic gods and stuff like that, like about writing about like Odin and Thor and shit. And there were just beer cans, and it was just sketchy and so scary. And then we heard footsteps, and we did not look. We just screamed, and we just ran. Like,
this was like last weekend, right?
No, I mean this was a long time ago. But yeah, there's been sketchy stuff that happens at Middle Creek. Anyways.
So but that's a really great story on how to be consistent.
Yeah. It's very relevant to this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but that's crazy though.
But
moral of the story is that sometimes you need to listen to your gut.
Yeah, and the same thing with running. What I was like, I'm gonna run 5 miles every day, and I started doing it. And after 2 weeks or so, my shins started getting really bad, and they were not shin splints. I was doing some, self-diagnosing, and shin splints is like a muscle thing, right? It's like, you explained it to me. It's like you're
peeling away from your bone.
Yeah, and I did actually end up then getting shin splints, and I'm like, okay, yeah, so this is what shin splints feels like. What I've been having is not shin splints, but it's more of an issue with my like shin bones. And when we ran, what was it? For the first podcast, right? It was Seeking Discomfort, right? We were gonna run 5 miles, and after we got a mile and a half out, I was like, dude, we have to turn around. Like my legs hurt so bad, and so that was like a hard distinction.
He was limping. He was like not doing okay.
That was a really hard distinction for me. I was like, okay, how do I distinguish between making an excuse for myself and just being a little bitch? And what's that Grant Cardone? There's like something in 10X rule.
Yeah, well, he has a chapter that's basically it's nicknamed "Don't Be a Little Bitch."
Right, and that's what I talked about at like dinner with your family, and you.
At dinner, and he brings like we were talking about the 10X rule, and I don't know if it was my dad or my mom. I was just like, yeah, what's your favorite chapter? And then you were like, oh, the chapter that says "Don't be a little bitch." And then I'm a very conservative family, so they're like, oh. Nice.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, but trying to find the distinction there between, is this enough of a risk that I'm being stupid by continuing to run, or is this me making an excuse for myself? And I think that can be applied to so many different areas when it comes to like building habits or consistency. Is you're going to get to a point where you're going to be faced with something, with like the weird sleep schedule and stuff like that. There would be times when I woke up and I'm just like, why am I doing this to myself? This is stupid. And I like don't even give it a second thought. Like I had a night, maybe like 4 nights ago. I woke up at 4 a.m. I walked over to my alarm. I turned it off and I was just like, I didn't even try. I just went back to sleep. I ran over to my alarm, turned it off, and I was like, I'm not doing this shit. And I just went right to bed. And that like wasn't even. We talked about like the mental battle. That was not even a battle. I didn't even try. I was just like, nope, not doing this. Like with yeah. But yeah. So how do you go about distinguishing between when you should be maybe considering giving yourself a break when it comes to a new habit or consistency, and when do you push past that?
I think that fighting with in your like that kind of internal struggle can also be a bit of a trap. As I was trying to figure out what that was for me, where that line was, I was like, okay, I was trying to like reason with myself, like that other side that's saying, hey, like this is like, you just go back to bed, like this is unhealthy, like all this stuff, whatever, and then I went through a period where I said, okay, so I don't fight with myself. I just go forward, right? Like there is no conversation, right? It's like, it's just who I am.
Right.
Part of my identity is I do not fight with myself. Yesterday I planned to get up at 4:30. I'm up at 4:30 now. I'm going to the gym. Right? If I want to take a nap later, I can, right? But for now, I'm up at 4:30 and I'm going.
Right.
There is no discussion, right? And the self-talk stops and I go. It's the same thing when like on the giving up side that you talk about. And I have had those before where I'm up and there's no conversation. I'm just like, nope.
Yeah.
I've had those before. But I think that like that, just that conversation, it's just so easy to get caught up in it. But also, when you're having that discussion, it just, because your mind does trick you, right? And it's not that some of those things are untrue, right? Like you said with the whole shin splints thing, like what would be the point of that? Like you're pushing past it, maybe there's a different way. Maybe you're thinking too unilaterally. Maybe there's another way you can push past. Is the goal to push yourself physically?
Yeah.
Partially, yes.
So
but the goal is also to get to where you want to go. Like the whole reason you're pushing yourself physically is to become hardened so that you can push forward.
And my solution there was, I was like, okay, running every day. I was like, my legs, and it was first was my left leg, and then it got into my right leg too. And I was like, this is getting bad. I was like, okay, I really need to stop running every day if I want this to get better. And if it doesn't get better, I'm gonna screw myself in the long run in terms of not being able to run if I keep injuring myself. So my solution there was, I was like, okay, I'm either going to run or I'm going to go to the gym. And if I get up and I feel good and I can run and my legs are feeling good, then I'll do that. And if not, then I have to go to the gym. And that was like my solution there, which I was like, I'm still pretty happy with. Like, okay, you're still doing something, like whether you're running 5 miles or you're lifting, like doing something pretty much every day to like push myself physically has definitely been a focus of mine and has been super, super positive. But still, I'm not perfect about it. So
yeah, I think that, well, first off, it's good that you came to the conclusion as far as like doing something that obviously you're pushing yourself to the point where maybe injury was the next step, right? And so realizing, hey, it's time for me to take a step back, recover, but I'm not going to take it as an excuse to not push myself. It's just that I'm not going to push myself in that way. For me, what's helped me a lot is in those moments to think of like kind of an image of myself, 10 years, 5 years, whatever down the line. And I think, okay, if that's where I want to go, what's my next move? Because it's not like I have to kind of think of, I'm not necessarily, I'm not the person who I feel like I need to be.
right.
It's not that I have like some deep-seated dissatisfaction with myself. It's that I have work to do. I need to work on myself. I need to become better. I need to strive. I need to make those improvements. So as crazy it might sound, I feel like thinking, okay, how would future me handle this, with those extra resources, or just asking a question that would potentially give you the answer that you're looking for.
Right.
Just saying, all right, if I want to get to that point, like, what's my goal right now? Like, what am I working towards? Or who do I want to be? I understand that I am me now, but I want to become a certain person in the future. Who am I trying to be more courageous? Am I trying to be, and I just made a video about this on my Facebook group. But asking yourself those questions, I feel like it can bring out sort of like a calmness, and then you start to think of, okay, yeah, I think I know what to do now, and rather than having that fight with yourself, because you might win sometimes, but you're probably going to lose a lot of times too, like that fight in
But if you're
itself.
fighting with yourself, who wins and who loses?
Hey! It's a good question, but I think, you have this comfort zone part of you, the side of you that says, like, oh yeah, society is doing this. It's okay if I have a shitty job and then I come home and I watch TV all day, and I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus,
Right.
and you do what makes you happy, but at the same time, I would definitely venture to guess that there's a large number of people that are just kind of, they're just not living up to what they know they can do.
Absolutely. And I have like a hard time, especially recently, because I've moved from, I think, moved to, I believe, being a lot less judgmental of people, and trying to look at everybody and see everybody on an even playing field in terms of everything, like likability and utility to society and stuff like that. But then sometimes it's just like, maybe this person genuinely just is not very likable, and that's why I don't like them, because they just have like a personality or a whatever, a trait that it makes it hard to be, I don't know, friends with them, or makes it hard to enjoy yourself around them. And one of the biggest things there is like cynical people. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that they had something that they wanted in life, and something happened. There wasn't enough consistency or persistence or whatever, and they didn't end up achieving whatever that thing that they wanted to achieve was. And so their outlook is that, oh, well, you're trying to achieve stuff. Well, when I tried to achieve something, it didn't work. So, and I've had to deal with a lot of people like that. It's just so incredibly frustrating to be like, look, okay, I know that things didn't work out for you. That sucks, but it doesn't mean they're not going to work out for me. And I think a lot of that, like having that state, like that's something I'm so afraid of, and that's something that motivates me to be consistent and persistent, is that I never want to be in the position where I'm like looking at other people wanting to succeed and being like, you're not going to do that because of the fact that I tried and it didn't work for me. That's something that like scares me so much, and something that is very motivating for me in terms of staying consistent and staying persistent, at least to some degree. And like the most important factor in all of that is just like always pushing, and the direction from which you push is going to change, right? Like, you're not every angle is going to work. And so there is definitely some like switching around and changing strategies. And then you get into the conversation of, are you switching to find a better strategy, or are you giving up?
It's an important question.
Yeah.
It's a very important question. And I'm so glad that you identify that about yourself as far as what motivates you, because, and this is something that I've learned from while studying Tony Robbins. I bring him up all the time because he's so revolutionary in the field that I'm pursuing, that it's hard not to talk about him. But he talks about how, like, motivating factors, right, and how we're always moving away from pain and towards pleasure, and both of those can be very, very motivating. More so, often enough, is moving away from pain.
Yeah.
Because it's that survival mindset of like, hey, this is something I don't want. I need to move away from that. So you identifying that about yourself is fantastic. And I think it's also important for others to see that. And you can use that as, hey, there's so many people that are cynical out there. and then you use that as an excuse to become cynical yourself, right? It's like,
Right.
yeah, you know what, everyone's doing it, whatever, I don't even care anymore. And then you become cynical yourself. Or you can use that as a, hey, never, nope, not that, I don't want that, Like for me, for instance, a motivating, like sort of a not that type of motivating factor is on the like depression, anxiety type of thing. Is like I know how bad it can get for me, so I need to do everything I can to not let that happen. And then on the pleasure side of things is, well, in the process of me figuring this out for myself, I've learned some things that I haven't really found on the internet a whole lot. So I'm gonna go try to find other people and help them out too.
Right.
Because there's so many other people that are suffering like that. But knowing that is very important because sort of if you understand that subconsciously, then that can serve you. But if you understand it consciously, then you can bring that to the forefront in your times of having a difficult time. If you are having a battle with yourself, like for me, if I'm having a battle with myself and then all of a sudden I kind of think of, okay, there's a lot of people in pain right now. I need to figure out a way to create something in this moment right now. Like they need me at my best right now. I need me at my best right now. How do I get there? Like enough of this petty crap. I need to push forward, and I think that that's just really important. I think both of us have been very, very fortunate to have that passion in our own different ways of things that really, really drive us, because we have both been consistent as far as trying to push past that sort of normalcy,
Right.
of our immediate surroundings. We're really trying not to follow the clear cut path, But I think that people have a hard time breaking out of that. I think that there's a lot of stigmas, that, like social stigmas, that sort of prevent people from venturing out there. Maybe a lot of fears, and maybe there's a lot of certainty with the current path that they're on. I think that a lot of them know that it maybe what the path that they're on might not actually work out, but it's kind of the one that they've been handed, But I think that can be very dangerous, because if you don't have that in your control and then it goes sideways, then it becomes very easy to become very resentful towards like the system, towards outside factors. And it's more, hey, it's not my fault, it's not my fault, it's not my fault.
Right.
But as soon as it all becomes not your fault, but all something,
Your fault.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as it's all your fault. No, as soon as you can realize that, you can, at least control your thoughts, and then you can start to control your surroundings.
Yeah.
And you can start to forge a future that is actually somewhat ideal for you.
Right. And one thing that I don't like, and I tend to be somewhat okay at avoiding this thing, is exit strategies. So when you have a plan or a goal or whatever, not looking at it as like, okay, if this doesn't work out, how am I? It's a weird distinction. It's going to be hard to articulate between
I think I know where you're going with this.
being completely fine with whatever you're doing not working out, right? Like if something that I do and it doesn't work out, I don't, wallow about it and like didn't work out, whatever, move on to the next thing. But also not giving yourself that thought of, well, how am I going to get out of this if it doesn't work out? And this is coming from, the reason I'm talking about this is that there's someone that I know someone who started a business and failed, and they're aware of the thing that I'm working on right now. And so I just get all of these like secondhand questions coming from this person who failed in business. And it's all like, well, how are you going to make that work? Well, and it's like, it's so frustrating, because it's like, I'm just going to make it work. I don't know. I've been working on this business for like a month now. And one of them was like, well, what's your exit strategy? I don't have one. Like, I'm just going to make it work. And if it doesn't work, then I'm back at square one, and it doesn't matter. And I think that's a big thing to just internalize, is that it just doesn't matter. Like, things are not going to work out. And that's not a reason not to do them. Like, when you're trying to tackle things, if you're tackling something of enough importance to be worth tackling, there's probably a pretty significant chance of failure. And so I find that there's this weird distinction between not having an exit strategy and also being okay with the thought of whatever you're doing not working, but not planning for it to not work. Because that's what an exit strategy is you are specifically planning for your own failure. So when this guy's like, well, what's your exit strategy for your startup? Like, why would I make a plan for myself to fail? Like, I don't want to put that in my, like, I'm acknowledging the possibility of failure, but the moment you make a plan for your own failure, you're kind of, I don't know. It's hard to articulate.
No, I get what you're saying. And so also on the business side of things, particularly when it comes to someone that is like a professional or maybe like a practitioner, then this is not exactly what you're talking about, but having an exit strategy when you're like 60, 70 years old, having someone to be able to come in and like, a strategy that says, hey, someone's going to come in and learn about my practice and they're going to take it over after I retire, right? So that,
right.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the traditional exit strategy. But what he's talking about, from what I gather, is hey,
if this doesn't work out, how are you going to play that, you know? Or if things go sideways, how are you going to make sure you don't take the pitfalls, you know? And in the famous book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he talks about this story of Vikings, how this, like the leader or the king, right? He leads his army to, and they're in these big boats, and then they reach the shore, and then and they're going up against
this big castle, and they are just so outnumbered. And he turns to his second in command and he says, all right, burn the boats.
Yeah.
And he's like, sir, like, with all due respect, burn the boats?
Sir.
So, yeah, exactly.
Vikings.
Like, yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Sir.
Yeah, I don't know. But, yeah, he questions it, and it says, no, we're going to take that.
Yeah.
We don't need the boats, right? And it's so crazy because, like we talked about before, we're motivated by going away from a pain, and we're motivated by going towards pleasure. But it's a little bit more skewed towards moving away from pain because we're built to survive.
It definitely is.
In those moments, we will be focused, oh crap, what if we don't actually beat them? Okay, we have these boats. Okay. We have these boats. Okay, we have these boats. And then, we have to the boats, you know? It's like, no, the boats aren't there, right? And that's because...
better win.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when there is no way out, when we're backed into our corner, and this is one of the amazing things about being human, is that we find a way.
Right.
When we have no other way, we're so much more resilient than I think that we believe, mentally speaking, right? We're very resilient, but also fragile creatures, right? We're very resilient in the way that we find that way out when we're backed into a corner.
Right.
But when we give ourselves a way out, we give ourselves an excuse, and that's where things start to fall apart because it's becoming a major part of our focus.
Right.
And that's because where focus goes, energy flows. If you have a way out, you're running that through. You're getting yourself experience, right, of like walking down that path, and then that's where you end up going.
Yeah. So I think that there are ways to apply that general concept into more everyday parts of your life. Okay. One of which being, I know this from personal experience when it comes to running. If I decide, okay, I'm going to use the elliptical today, which is something I tried to do to like reduce stress on my shin bones, and it would not work, right? So the elliptical is easier than running. It's inside. You're not out in a snowstorm. It's comfortable, but I would like start for like 15 minutes, and I'd be like, I don't want to do this, and it's so easy because all you do is you just step off. You're already at home, right? You just step off, go up to your bed, do like go to sleep. I don't know. It was in the later evening when I was doing this, but when you put yourself out in the cold and you get 20 minutes in, right? You're already 2.5, closing in on 3 miles out. You have no exit strategy. You have to run back to your house. You're out in the snow. So guess what? Like, especially when it's like really snowing, it's like the longer it takes you to get back there, the colder it's going to be and the worse it's going to be. And it's so much easier mentally to be in a much more uncomfortable situation and thrive in it than it is to be in a comfortable situation with an easy out. Like I literally can't, like it's so weird because I can get myself to go out running, and the moment I step outside and I start running in the snow or whatever, there is no turning back. I don't know what it is mentally, but like I will not, and I have not yet decided to turn around early or do anything like that. Like once I'm out, I'm out. But when I decided to give myself like the little easier one, which has only been, it was only for like maybe 2 or 3 days when I was trying to give my shins a break a couple weeks ago. I like couldn't do it. Like I did not have the mental strength to just stay on the elliptical because like the exit was so easy. It was literally just step off. I'm already home. Like it was so easy to just stop doing that.
Absolutely.
And it's a similar thing with like going to the gym versus working out at home.
100%.
If you drive to the gym, like I'm thinking like, oh, I don't want to look like a pansy. Like I just came here. Like I'm not going to leave, 15 minutes after I came. Like I really need to at least get, whatever, 45 minutes in or something like that. And like, just, I don't know, like putting yourself out there and putting yourself in situations where the exit strategy doesn't exist quite as much. Or another super helpful thing is for me, like in terms of getting schoolwork done or working on the business or whatever, is like getting out of my house. Because especially if I like go to a cafe to work on something, I'm much more inclined to actually work on whatever I'm there to work on because I'm not going to go down a YouTube rabbit hole in a cafe. Like this just won't happen. I don't know why, but it just won't happen. Like if I'm in a cafe, like
you're
I'm
away from those patterns and those anchors,
you're in an environment where turning around, and it's not a crazy thing, right? Like, it would be pretty easy if you're in a cafe to just have your Bluetooth earbuds and just be like, oh, I'm just going to stop working. I'm going to watch YouTube videos or something. But it just doesn't happen like that. I don't know why. But if I'm at home on my desk, that's super easy. It's super easy to say, oh, you know what? My brain just not really focused on the school thing right now. And I'm just going to go and like watch some cryptocurrency videos or something.
Yeah.
So there's like little ways in your everyday activities, I think, where you can sort of remove that exit strategy, and it helps so much with like being consistent and persistent, and just has a really big impact on that. But just small, tiny little things like going to the gym versus working out at home, or going outside running. And even though it's way more uncomfortable, it's way easier to do it than it is to like run on the elliptical in your house, or going to a cafe to work on stuff instead of sitting in my room. Because I like the other day I woke up decently early, and I literally didn't get out of bed until 5 p.m. because I had my laptop by my bed, and I just worked on this app thing the entire day. Like I didn't eat, I didn't do anything. Like I just stayed in bed and worked. Like I got a huge amount done, but it was literally, wait, I said the other day, this was yesterday. Like did not, it was yesterday, wasn't it? I don't know, I think it was yesterday. Time is a blur. But literally didn't, I don't know what relevance this has, but like stayed in bed until 5 o'clock. And like I got stuff done. I got a lot of stuff done, but I find that it's way easier for me to be productive when I put myself out of my comfortable environments. I guess that wasn't a very good example because I did get stuff done.
It's a great But I understand what you're saying, and they talk about the important. By they, I mean like self-help books and things like that. It's like kind of like a general understanding that having your workplace in your bedroom is just not a good idea.
And that's where mine is all day.
Exactly.
All day,
and the reason for that is because, like I mentioned before briefly, is that we have these anchors, right? Which essentially is we go through this pattern, right, where you watch TV in your room, or you watch a show in your room, and you have this emotional experience of like, oh man, this is fun, this is great, and then all of a sudden the next day, or an hour later, you're like, okay, time to get work done, and it's a little bit uncomfortable, right? And then like subconsciously or maybe consciously in your mind, you say, okay, yeah, but in this same area, we also had this better thing that wasn't painful. It was actually very fun. Why don't we do that? Yeah, let's do that, because you're anchored, right? And you can be anchored through all your different senses. So visually, auditorily, through smell as well. And so when you go to a new place with the preconceived idea that you're going to go there and be productive, and then you go there and be productive, right? All of those different senses that you're experiencing, right? Like the smell of the coffee or the the feel of your chair, just everything, right? It's you're forming a new anchor, and so anytime those senses are stimulated again in that way, then you sit down, you're like, okay, time to work, Like I had this experience when I was I bought this candle, right? And every time I would go do work, I would light the candle, I would sit down at my computer, open it up, and I'd work. And it was fantastic, right? But that's just an example of how you can actually control that yourself.
Right. Sometimes I have weird things where if I'm up early in the morning, like I feel like I can't start working until I make a cup of coffee. And it's not because I'm not addicted to coffee or anything. Like I don't get headaches if I don't have coffee. I don't it doesn't give me an energy boost, but it's become this like mental thing where like when I sit down at my computer with a cup of coffee, that means it's time to work. And I don't know why, but that's just like
it's exactly what we just talked about. Yeah. We have these patterns and we go through them, and it's okay. I want, and it's not necessarily connected to some sort of logical idea, right? It can be purely emotional or purely instinctual of like, okay, I want to work right now. Okay, let me make a cup of coffee, It's like there's no actual benefit for you, right?
Yeah.
It's just that's just what you do. It's a part of your identity or your sequence or your pattern. And so then but it's good to know about those things because it can turn from I don't know why this is like this, but it works out for me. But this other thing in my life, I don't know why it doesn't work out for me here, but that's just kind of how it is. But then you learn about it and you're like, okay, so I can collapse this pattern. I can make this not be an issue over here, and then I can work towards this being a better thing by working for that, working towards that.
So when it comes to being persistent and really staying consistent with things, I think probably the most important part is getting outside of that comfort zone area because it's genuinely
and staying out there.
Yeah, it's easier. It's easier to work out at the gym than it is to work out at home. It's harder to do a 15-minute workout at home than it is to do a 45-minute workout at the gym. At least for me, just based on that scenario. It's infinitely easier to run 5 miles out in a freaking snowstorm than it is to run a single mile on the elliptical in my nice, warm house. And the actual activity is much easier, but like mentally you're just thinking, at least for me the whole time I'm thinking about like it'd be so easy to just step off this elliptical right now. Like I could just step off the elliptical, go do schoolwork. I'm kind of behind, I should probably be doing schoolwork. Maybe I should just read a book. Like that's good. Like I don't really need to be on the elliptical right now. I could step right off. And like it's genuinely harder to do less work in that situation than it is to put yourself in a different situation and be more productive with it. Or in terms of the cafe thing, like it's not a struggle for me. I do a lot of work at Stonehouse Cafe. Like sometimes it's good 40 minutes from where I live. Sometimes I will literally just get up and I'll be like not feeling it. I'm like, I just need to go to Stonehouse because I'm just going to bring my laptop and I'm just going to work. And I can go and just work for hours uninterrupted, undistracted, and just do my thing. Whereas if I stayed home, I'd be working and I'd be like, oh, I should probably switch over to like do this thing. Like, maybe I should read a book right now. And like there's so many things to like mess you up. And I think finding really simple and small changes in particular activities, and I think a lot of them are locational changes. It's so much harder to have a mental change than it is to put yourself in a different situation or different location and allow that location or situation to affect your mental state.
Absolutely. Starting from scratch as far as like what you're anchored to, like just going to a new place and saying, okay, this is my workplace,
Yeah.
So much easier than trying to collapse that pattern where that has so much different like memories and stuff. They're just like, no, screw that. Just go to a cafe, get some work done,
Right. I mean, I literally turned my closet in my room. I built a shelf in there so I can sit there, and there's like, like a little light with like the chain to pull down.
Yeah.
And so that's where I've set up to work on this new project a lot. And it's just, I don't know why, but it's just like I associate that my closet then with like when I'm in the closet, that's where the work gets done.
You get it done, man.
Seriously, no, I'll just go in there and like it's tiny. It's like as big as this table probably.
Wow.
And I'll just sit down, like pull my door shut and flick the little light and then sit at my computer. And I don't know why, but it's just that little shift. That versus sitting on my chair or sitting at my other desk out in my room. Like Just tiny little things like that make it much easier to be consistent with whatever I'm trying to do. But then there's the question of, are you consistent with putting yourself in locations and in situations which enable consistency?
Well, it helps though to have that starting point, because if you can think like, okay, I'm really messed up right now, like I'm just confused or frustrated or whatever, and like, oh my goodness, like my sister's pissing me off, or someone just yelled at me, like whatever, like, okay, all I need to do is go here and the rest will be fine. I don't need to figure everything out. I just need to go to Stonehouse Cafe. Or I just need to get back in the closet.
Yeah.
Things like that. I do have two important things to talk about.
All right.
And in no particular order. The first one being, and we've kind of talked about this before, but I want to just bring more intention to it, is this amazing quote. And I first heard this from Tony Robbins, but the quote goes is, he who has a strong enough why can bear any how. Originally said by Frederick, German last name, I can't pronounce it, Knights something. But it's just so important though, because like we talked about this before the podcast, but if you don't have a reason for doing something, if it's even remotely inconvenient, you're not going to do it. You know, if it's like, why would I do this? This makes no sense, right? But one of the reasons why we have been able to push past these barriers, we've been able to recover from that, like from the failure, for instance, is we have a strong enough reason. We both have very strong whys for why we're doing this, pain that we're trying to escape, as well as on the opposite side of something we're trying to achieve. And it's not just with us, it's something that we want to change, out there.
Right.
And so there's just so much potential reward. And so moving towards that can be extremely, pleasurable. But if you don't have that, then that can be difficult. So maybe briefly, maybe not. What do you think that people can do to try to maybe find that purpose? I feel like we could have an entire different podcast just dedicated to this.
Yeah. Maybe next week we'll have to do a.
We can touch on it here.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to be able to have consistency. You need to have like that carrot of like, okay, why am I going to be consistent?
Right. This is a hard one for me, because it's something that I feel like I genuinely I've always had just a drive to and a desire to just do something great or something different. For me, as much as that desire, like going towards that pleasure of accomplishing something meaningful, the biggest motivating thing for me is I just see the way that people live, and I'm like, I do not want to live like that. People around me, people in my family, friends, bosses, coworkers, whatever. I've been exposed to seeing a lot of situations that people are in and going, wow, I need to do everything I can to not be in this situation. Like when I was working as a roofer, like people that had been working there for 50 years, and they seemed pretty happy, but they had never done anything in their lives, like accomplished things of proportion other than just roof. Like, there's so many different things that qualify as awesome accomplishments. Getting your PhD, or, becoming a doctor, or, running an ultra marathon, or running a regular marathon, or there's so many things that you can do to accomplish. And it's not like you don't need to build a company. You don't need to be an entrepreneur to accomplish things. You can follow a very traditional career path and still have an impact and do things that are really interesting. But basically, I would see these people and I'm just like, I cannot imagine if I like snap my fingers, right? And now I'm 63 and I've spent the past 50 years of my life, or not quite, 45 years of my life, something like that, roofing. Like just putting roofs on buildings. And it's something that needs to be done, right? Buildings need roofs. But I see that and I'm like, oh my God, we are not doing that. Like, absolutely not. And so then I'm like, okay, now what are we going to do? How am I going to make the solution to avoid that pain? Like, there's a thing in startups and in business that's like, are you making a vitamin or are you making a painkiller? right? Are you taking a problem that someone has and making it less of a problem, or are you just making something more enjoyable? And typically the painkiller will do a lot better than the vitamin. Just because that's what people want to avoid. Like if they have a pain point in their life, they're more inclined to avoid that pain point than they are to want to make something that's already okay better. But yeah, my biggest thing is in terms of motivating me to want to be consistent and persistent is I look at the lives that people have around me and I am terrified by them. I'm terrified that I'm going to end up living a life like that. And I don't mean this to like insult anybody that is a tradesperson or anything like that, right? I have a lot of respect for people that are able to stay that consistent, you know, worked at the same place for 50 years. But I don't see how I would ever be happy in that situation. Like, never. Like, I would be so very, very displeased with my life. And there are definitely people that are happy in those situations, but there's also a lot of people that are not happy in the world, and I don't want to be one of them. So, like, avoiding, for me, yeah. So, main thing when it comes to motivation to be consistent or persistent and just move forward and stay motivated, it's not really to like, oh, I want to be able to travel. Like, that's a big thing for me. I want to be able to have freedom and I want to be able to travel, but that's not really it. What's it is I see people around me and I see situations that they're in, and I'm just like, I need to stay as far away from that as possible. How can I do that? So, what about you?
That makes a lot of sense. No, I like what you're saying. How you associate, like, although you understand that, there's nothing wrong with being in trade, but you associate that to being like, oh no, I do not want to be unhappy, and you would be unhappy doing that,
Absolutely.
Like you could think of like roofing as, you could say like, yeah, okay, I'm a roofer. I listen to my boss. I do my job, whatever. Or it could be like, I construct shelter for families.
Right.
I do that every day, and it is so fulfilling. If that's your outlook on it, then more power to you. Fantastic. That's awesome. And I think that's a good point to make as well. But at the same time, like you're saying, you don't want that. That's not, it's like, to you wouldn't feel that way.
Right.
Right. Someone else might feel completely differently about the same thing, but you found kind of what pushes you through and what you like in your times when you're kind of facing like, okay, like, do I give up right now? Do I quit? Whatever. Do I go back to bed? And you think like, no, I don't want to be unhappy. Like, I need to push past this, and so I think that's really important. Yeah. You said what was my original question? I'm trying to ask myself the same thing. I'm like, what was that?
Yeah, like what?
Oh, the why.
Yeah.
The why. I mean, and I touched on this a little bit before, and we will wrap up shortly. I just facing so much mental health myself, right? And then also like from, very young age, I wanted to be an inventor, right? I forget who exactly, but someone told me, hey, that's more of a hobby than anything. And I was like, oh, crap, and so that could really crush me. But then, later on, I kind of got my confidence back, and, and then more things crushed me. And then, just through the whole just self-discovery process of like figuring out what worked with mental health, just for me, like what really, really pulls me through is, first off, like we talked about, not going back to being bad.
Right. So that's avoiding pain that you have experienced in some way or another.
And then also thinking about how out there, there's some sort of maybe young adult or kid, whatever, and they're alone in the room. Everyone thinks they're just fine, but they're just miserable.
Right.
They don't even necessarily know why, or maybe they have gone through trauma, right? And they just live like that, like feeling super lonely while they have so many people that love them around them. I just think about people like that, and they're out there. That's reality,
Absolutely.
But that's just so sad. And I think that as a society, we've accepted that. We've accepted like people. Yeah, there's people that are super suicidal out there. I don't think it has to be like that, though. I don't think that people have to get that bad. But by all means, life sucks, and life will flatten you out no matter who you are, right? Doesn't matter how many resources you have. Doesn't matter how supportive people are to you, right? Life will flatten you out. But I don't think that people have to get to the point where they feel like they have, their only option is that.
Right, because when it's something is a given, there's no need to be too upset about it happening. And that's like failure in life is just something that happens. And I haven't experienced anything close to what people that I know have experienced. But when you accept that fact and you're like, hey, you know what? It's okay. Stuff happens and not everything's going to work out for me. Then it's okay. Then failing becomes okay. And I think in a similar, or I think that could be applied similarly to what you're talking about. Like life is going to suck, and that's like all right, and it's okay to acknowledge that. Like one thing, there are definitely people out there who are just like constantly positive and constantly happy, and I used to be like that, I think. And then I experienced things that were shifted my perspective of like, okay, maybe sometimes things do suck. Like, maybe it's not all fantastic all the time. I don't know. But.
No, that's a good point. Do you have anything to wrap up with this?
Not particularly. I think it would be good for us to maybe talk on the next episode more in depth about sort of like the why.
I agree.
Things in our lives.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, consistency, persistence. I'll say not something I'm fantastic at, but the biggest things that I find to help me is putting myself into like burning your boats or whatever, putting yourself into different environments and different situations that are conducive to accomplishing whatever that particular thing that you want to have consistency with is. Yeah.
I agree.
If that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. What I would say,
and this is actually my second point that I was going to bring up, but all of those things we talked about are very important. The last little thing that I would say that maybe we didn't touch on a whole lot. There's a quote that it's actually an African proverb, but I heard Robert Downey Jr. say it in some interview. But
the African proverb master.
African proverb. But it says, "Faster alone, farther together." And it's not that one of those things is better than the other. Sometimes you need to go fast, but also you need to plan to go farther.
That's interesting.
What that says to me is that you really need to, if you're looking,
because life is a marathon. Like you need to be able to be consistent. That's why we're talking about this.
Right.
You can't just like sprint once every 5 years. Like you need to consistently. There's gonna be times where you do need to sprint. But farther together means to me that you need to find people that are going to support you, and that when you're at your lowest point, you don't want your best friend to say, it wasn't meant to be. Like, you know what, it's fine. Like just go, whatever you're. Just go do whatever,
Yeah.
You want someone to say, like, remember the reason why you started, you want like for us, for instance, one of the reasons why this podcast works so well is because,
not only do we have amazing things to share with people, right, but also it gives us an excuse to keep each other on track. Like we're in each other's peripheral.
Yeah.
Much more. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And being that positive
influence on each other helps us a lot. Right? And at least I'm speaking for myself, and you also have some other positive people around you. I also have some positive people around me, That's so important, right? And it's also so important on the flip side to see who is draining your energy, who is feeding you those negative thoughts. It might be, and probably is, someone that's close to you.
Yeah.
And at some point in your life, you're going to have to say, do I want to keep this person in my life and let them drain my energy? And potentially be a major reason why I don't achieve the things I want to achieve in life? Or am I going to have that difficult conversation?
It's definitely worth it to have the difficult conversation.
Absolutely. And that's the given, right? But that's a choice that they're going to have to make.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to make again in my everyone, you just have to really, really be careful who you spend your time with, right? Yeah. It is just so ridiculously important. And if you are the most gifted individual, but you're around a bunch of crappy friends that are that just have negative mindsets, you're gonna have a really difficult time.
Right, and involving, I think, similar to what you're saying, or maybe right on track with what you're saying. Like if you're trying to stay consistent with a particular thing, having someone else doing that thing with you, if it's possible, like for the podcast. If I wasn't doing it with you, I would not have done it this morning, right? Because like my friends and I are going to Maryland today, so I would have been like, oh, we're going to Maryland, I won't do the podcast today because, you know, you got to pack and get ready. But because there's like a commitment that you and I have together, I'm here doing it, and probably the same for you in terms of how you were feeling last night with feeling sick, and probably this morning as well. But we're both still here. Like, we both have had reasons. Yours is much more unpleasant than mine.
Yeah, I was puking my guts out.
Yeah, I just want to go to Maryland to record a song. But either way, like, we both had reasons today why we could have said, no, not today. But because of the fact that we're doing it together, we have a commitment to each other. We're both here doing it, and for the better, obviously. So finding people, if possible, that can uplift you and be involved in a particular habit you're trying to form is also very beneficial. Like gym buddies and stuff like that, running partners, all that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been the Drake and Josh podcast. If you guys have something that you want us to cover, maybe an idea or something that you're struggling with, be sure to share it in the comments down below. We're always looking for ways that we can contribute towards this little community that we're building, and that's kind of the whole reason why we're doing this. So make sure you do go into the comments, say something, right? Or you just say hi, hey, this helped me out, or maybe just something that you think that we could cover that could help you, or maybe a friend. So be sure to do that. And anything else?
Don't think so.
All right.
Talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week. This is where I awkwardly find the stop button.